Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is really an honor and a pleasure for me to be able to welcome you here, this historic building of the German Reichstag. This is, I think, one of the most special buildings in Germany or Berlin when it comes to history. You really have this balance of the old and the new, this historic and beautiful castle with this very modern dome. My colleague Sarmad will tell us a few words maybe about that later. So I'm really happy in this context to be able to have this discussion. The topic of our panel discussion today, as you know, how has globalization affected the way in which we respond to inequality in society? The interplay between globalization, social inequality, and education. The panelists that we have this evening, I'm very happy, it's a very diverse lecture. First of all, earlier today we had the pleasure and honor of getting to know Dr. Emmanuel Franklyne, Ogbunwezeh. I don't know why I have some challenges here. Ogbunwezeh, who is the head of the Africa Department of the International Society for Human Rights, which, as we learned today, is the second largest organization in human rights after Amnesty International. So it's great to really have someone here as an expert and a practitioner of human rights. Secondly, I'd like to give a special introduction for the first time to Hassan, Shire, Sheikh, who is coordinator of the East Horn of Africa Human Rights Defenders Project. We'll have a chance to hear his keynote address on Monday, but I'm grateful to have you here this evening in the multilateral context, and I very much look forward to your participation. To my right is Ambassador Karl-Erik Norrman. Ambassador Karl-Erik Norrman has basically dedicated his life to diplomacy. First wearing an official hat, you can say, governmental hat, now wearing an unofficial hat, non-governmental. He served as ambassador for Sweden, a diplomat for Sweden around the world for many years. He actually had the chance of being serving as the director for the Swedish Cultural Ministry. So actually he was really designing and actually leading cultural diplomacy on behalf of Sweden around the world. So really somebody who's had direct experience in the field of cultural diplomacy. His current position, he's the Secretary General as well as the founder of the European Cultural Parliament, which is his attempt to actually try to, let's say, complement the European Union, which is primarily political, economic in nature, with actually a cultural infrastructure. He has an amazing network of everything from pundits to scholars to members of parliament in Europe, and he defines Europe also in an open way, so not just the EU, in the European Cultural Parliament. So a fascinating institution, and I'm really happy that he could be here today for the panel discussion. You'll have a chance to hear his keynote address Sunday morning, so make sure you don't party too much Saturday night so that you're here fresh. First thing Sunday morning, the keynote address of Ambassador Karl-Erik Norrman. Also, of course, he's a member of the advisory board of the ICD, as well as a member of the faculty of the Center for Cultural Diplomacy Studies, where, as you know, the ICD offers MA, MBA, and PhD courses to students from around the world. So for many reasons, Karl-Erik, I'm very happy that you could join us as well. Final introduction, and really, I think the highest pleasure for me in particular is actually Sarmad Hussein. Sarmad Hussein, first of all, is one of my best friends ever. We've gotten to know each other really since I first arrived here. I think it was in the year 2000, 2001, right in the beginning. And since then, we really had a great friendship as well as a partnership in terms of doing many events here at the Reichstag in the Parliament. Sarmad has come as a speaker for our young leaders, he's come as a speaker for our students, and now I really appreciate you also being here in the context of the Human Rights Conference. What's interesting with Sarmad, first of all, he's German. We haven't had so many German speakers today. Secondly, he's the advisor on immigration policy and Islam for the FDP party. So in that sense, really someone who has also given a lot of thoughts and has a lot of practice with these issues of human rights. As you know, immigration is a major challenge right now for Germany. Integration is a big question for Germany. What is German identity? What does it mean to be German? I think in that sense, Sarmad has really been involved in some of the most cutting-edge discussions taking place in German politics on these issues. So perhaps we could give a brief welcome for all of the speakers. I will briefly disappear to get the ambassador of Rwanda, and I'll give the floor over to Sarmad. If you could please join me in a very, very warm welcome for Sarmad Hussein. Thank you.
So before I start with my introduction, it would be great if you could just introduce yourself with a very small one sentence, who you are, where you're from, so I have a little bit of an idea. Could you start perhaps from there? Just trying to, I'm not going to marry you, I'm just to have
my name is Nkulikiyinka, and I'm here from Germany, from Panelist. I'm a student and very interested in the field of human rights education and
Yeah, they come. Yeah, this guy, thank you.
Hello, my name is Sheikh. I'm a recent PhD graduate from UCL in London, but I'm actually from Berlin. I grew up here, and I'm also half American, and I specialize on psychological questions and identity and multiculturalism.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Mariam Goldie. I'm from Georgia, Tbilisi, and outside of war. It's my first year in Georgian American University.
Great, thank you.
I'm Anita. I'm from Slovenia, and I'm a PhD student, but I also work for the Institute in the field of human rights development cooperation.
Why don't you use the mic?
I am Reverend Javamitra, Indian Buddhist monk. I have been working about religious concept Buddhism developed in India.
Thank you.
He is from India. My friend Sujan Barua. He is a Buddhist monk. We also together come to join at this conference.
Great.
Hi, my name is Hannah Pearson, and I'm British Chinese, and I'm very interested in British and Chinese perspectives.
Could you all use the mic and then also press when you speak, and then when you stop speaking and press it again and don't
My name is Hannah, and I'm from the UK, but I'm British Chinese, and I'm very interested in British and Chinese perspectives on human rights.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary. I'm Spanish, but I'm studying European law in the UK, and I'm very interested on the European side of implementation of human rights and international development.
Where are you from, Spain?
Spain.
Where?
Valencia.
Oh, beautiful. I think
You can come around.
Hello, my name is Sabina, and I come from Slovenia. I study law, and I'm working as an intern at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy.
Great.
My name is Anne. I'm from Belgium. I study European law, and I'm working at the ICT.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and I'm from Ireland, and I'm working at ICT as well. I have a bit of a cold.
Hello, my name is Mohammed. I'm from Somalia / Scotland / Italy, and I work at ICT and I hold a Master in International Law.
I'm Sam. I work at the ICD too, from Manchester, and I have an interest in war and cultural heritage and how its destruction impacts on collective identity.
Could you also close the mic when you're done with the,
Sure.
the gentleman from Somalia / Italy
Okay, I am Giuseppe, I come from Italy, and I am the head of program of cultural diplomacy, news and PR at the ICD.
My name is Daniel, I come from Poland, I'm a law graduate and I am an intern at the ICD.
My name is Hanatsu, I'm from Nigeria, currently I'm also on Nigerian Paris. My name is Maria Morales, I'm from Spain and Belgium, and I'm into human rights. I live in Germany.
Where in Spain?
Córdoba.
Córdoba, yeah, I like Spain.
I'm Maria, and I'm from Cyprus, but I currently live in London, and I'm doing a master's in math and politics in Goldsmiths University.
My name is Kate, I'm from South Africa.
Where is that? Sorry, I've been there recently.
I'm from Johannesburg, but I live in Cape Town.
Johannesburg in Central or? It's a beautiful.
I'm doing my master's in justice and transformation.
Hello, I'm Lee. I come from Japan, and I study political science now.
I'm Nadine. I'm American Egyptian, and I'm studying here in Germany integrated social sciences. In New York.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I was born and I lived there, but then I moved to Westchester. No, Westchester, Bedford, Westchester.
I'm very curious.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions.
I'm Maggie. I'm from North Carolina in the United States, and I do women's studies and women's history and global women's issues. And I love what you had to say in your talk, so I'm looking forward to yours on Sunday or whenever it's going to be.
My name is Karina. I'm from Freiburg, Germany, and I just graduated in cultural anthropology and psychology in autumn 2008.
I'm Alessandra. I come from Italy. I'm part of the Youth Association for Informal Education and Social Mobility, and I have a background in human rights and conflict management.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone to add?
Yes.
My name is Maria. I'm coming from Slovakia. I'm studying international relations and I'm working as an intern for ICT. I work because it's my last day.
Hello, my name is Rudolf from Slovakia as well. I'm doing my PhD in international relations and also speech and English at ICT.
My name is Jacob. I'm from the United States, the state of Virginia, and I'm.
Sorry, because I'm too Virginia.
I beg your pardon?
Where in Virginia are you from?
I go to school at James Madison University in Harrisonburg.
Have you been to Shire?
Yes, I have. Yes, very much so. And I'm currently a student at Praia University, and I study history and political science.
Virginia is really much more than, I mean, North Carolina.
Very much so.
My name's Alex. I'm from San Francisco, United States. And I'm also a student at Praia University.
My name is Sybil. I'm running my own business. I'm German, come from Hamburg, and my business is for German coaching and intercultural training.
And my name is Barbara. I'm a student of international relations in sociology coming from Poland, and I'm currently internee in ICD.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I think all these three wonderful personalities have to say much, much more than I have to say. I'm a very boring, one-sided, narrow-minded German legal advisor here in the parliament working with the FDP. The reason why I'm so upset and so distressed and so sad is because our polls are very poor right now, and I'm just in a very difficult position because everyone in Germany hates my political party. So fortunately you are from abroad, so you do not know that. Oh, okay, great. No, we are not. And so the reason why we are here is because I belong to this party, and we are probably the most unpopular party in Germany currently. It will change hopefully soon, but people just don't like us. That's the truth, you know. And the reason why they don't like us is because we promised a lot before the last elections, and we did not stick to our words. We did a lot of mistakes. And I think it happens in many other countries as well. If you do not deliver, people will not vote for you again. So that happened to us, and that's the reason why I'm so sad. Anyway, let me come back to Mark. Would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, just very briefly, I'll just give you a very brief overview of what I'm doing here in the Bundestag. I'm working on the field of innovation, and the field of Islam, and the field of intercultural dialogue. My parents originally come from Pakistan. I was born in Germany, and I lived in a city called Bonn. I don't know if you've heard about that. It used to be the capital, and then about 10 or 12 years ago, the government moved from Bonn, so I had to move as well. I think Berlin is a little bit more exciting, a little bit boring, but anyway, it was a nice city. So working here, and because I have to tell you something, because I've been to Sweden recently. I love Galveston.
Yeah.
So,
which particular street?
I think Stockholm is a very good place. Yeah, you know, I just have to tell anyone, because there are so many beautiful places all around the world. But here, people are from Virginia, from Valencia. In Valencia, you have beautiful sea views, you know, where you get dolphins. I've been there recently, so I'm very excited. Have you been to the sea view, this dolphin? You see this?
Yeah.
That's very beautiful. So, yeah, that's why I was very excited to mention. So anyway, I work on immigration, Islam, and the intercultural dialogue, and on national identity, because as you all know, we in Germany, we have a huge problem in terms of accepting immigration or immigrants as an integral part of society. Germans are still very hesitant and still very hostile vis-a-vis being an immigration country. They just believe that we have never been an immigration country and we will never be an immigration country, which is actually very unfortunate because Germany, because of the geographical development, has no other choice than becoming an immigration country, because we do need, for our skilled works, we do need qualified immigrants and qualified immigration. So these are the changes that we are working on right now in the Parliament. There's still a big problem with the issue of Islam in Germany. Today there was just a very interesting statement by the current president who said that Islam is not a part of Germany. Muslims who live here are a part of Germany. He was contradicting what the former president said. He was admitting that Islam is a part of Germany. So this is still a very hot topic here. Islam is still perceived as a threat for Germany, and all the Muslims are more or less perceived as the enemies within. I mean, nobody would openly say that or declare that because it's against the political correctness. But here, because we're sitting in a closed room and we will not go to the press or whatever, I am just telling you very frankly and openly that Islam is still perceived as something very, very negative in Germany. We do have some different steps, like we have a so-called Islam conference where we're trying to integrate Islam and the Muslim community better into the German society. We try to allow them having their Islamic lessons, and they already have the mosques, but giving them more legal status here in Germany. But still a long way to go. It's a very, very sensitive issue and a very, very difficult issue in Germany because there are some things, some issues that we still have. We still do not like to accept that these things are already, reality in Germany. You all know that German immigration history is very different. We had about 56 years ago, we had a large immigration from Turkey, Portugal, Spain, Italy, but not because we were so welcoming to other countries. It was just because after having lost the Second World War, there was a lack of manpower, and Germans themselves had, the manpower had decreased so tremendously, so we had no other choice than bringing people from other countries to Germany who worked in coal mines or in factories or whatever, and built up this country. But we all hoped in Germany that these people will go back to Turkey, or will go back to Spain or Italy, whereas they stayed here for more than 20, 25, 30, 40 years, and now Germany is trying step by step accepting that they will not go back, they will stay here, whether we like it or not, and we have to find some ways how to deal with that. Other than that, I'm also in the Human Rights Committee, and I work on human rights issues. Currently, we are very much focusing on the situation in Syria, because there are very large human rights violations going on, and we try to understand what kind of role Germany has to play. We are now much more sensitive because during the Libya crisis, Germany had a standpoint that was not necessarily something perceived as very productive or constructive. So now we're trying more, finding a more constructive role and trying to work with the international community in order to stop these human rights violations that are going on. But it's still, of course, always a matter of interest. We have the Security Council in the UN, and China and Russia do have other interests. So today the Russian president was in Germany and in Berlin, and there were some negotiations going on about Syria. Then we're dealing, of course, with the Middle East. We are dealing with Africa. In Africa, for instance, we are dealing with the situation in Sudan, or situation in Nigeria, the situation in different countries where minorities, where we believe minorities are somehow under threat, and we try to focus on these countries, and our parliamentarians visit these countries. Also in Asia, like Pakistan, India, where the German government is trying to promote, and also the parliament is trying to promote our values of human rights, of democracy, of equal rights. And for instance, because I mentioned before, my parents are from Pakistan, so whenever the Human Rights Committee from Germany travels to Pakistan, they're very interested in visiting Christian minorities and other minorities and to understand their situation. So, then we're dealing with a very, very sensitive issue, which is the migration from North Africa or from Africa to the European continent, and we are dealing with the so-called immigration that comes from Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, and other African countries via the Mediterranean to Italy, to Lampedusa, or to Cyprus, or to Malta. And as you know, a lot of those refugees, they are killed because they try to escape from these countries and come to Europe, and then in the Mediterranean, because of having little boats or very fragile boats which are not very solid, they somehow sink and they die, unfortunately, in the Mediterranean. And we, as a European country, of course, we do have a responsibility how to deal with that, and how we can protect also the human rights of those people who try to escape from their countries. So there's a very heavy debate going on if this is the right thing, what we are doing in our European countries to block or to hinder those people entering the European continent and pushing their boats back to the African continent, where predominantly they all, when they have to go back to the countries, they are under threat, and somehow they are killed because they are able to take the boats back to the African continent, and then they somehow die in the Mediterranean. So this is a very, very sensitive issue, of course, for us, but we have to deal with that. There's no other option. Then we try to focus also on human rights issues in Germany. Of course, when we demand from other countries to protect and to promote human rights, we also have to protect human rights in Germany, and we try to talk to NGOs like Panelist and Human Rights Watch and others, and we ask them, what kind of problems do we have here in Germany, like asylum seekers in Germany are perceived as, the situation of asylum seekers in Germany is perceived as very bad. Indeed, it is very bad. There's different refugee camps in Germany as well. And when we criticize the refugee camps in Greece or in Malta or in Lampedusa, we also have to see how refugees are treated here. And we in Germany, we are also not necessarily being very welcome to all those refugees. So a big issue as well is, besides the issue of Islam that I mentioned, is also the issue of racism in Germany. We do have clear-cut problem with racism in Germany. If you look from your physical appearance, not necessarily very German, it is still a big issue that people are offended and insulted and attacked, and that's also something we deal with and we try to find ways how to change the situation. Other than that, we work with a lot of other countries in having exchanges, like our Human Rights Committee and we have a Human Rights Commissioner. He also visits other countries, like he has been to Belarus and he has been to Ukraine and to Egypt, or he also travels quite often to the US because there are also some human rights issues between Germany and the US in terms of death penalty and Guantanamo and all these issues. So we are in very close exchange with all different international countries and partners, and of course also with our European partners. The issue of human rights is a very, very tricky and complicated issue because, to be very honest with you, I never like to speak very, diplomatically or very carefully. I always like to speak very openly and frankly. So I will tell you very openly and frankly that the human rights issue is a very tricky one, a very complicated one, a very complex one. Just to give you an example, we do criticize, for instance, countries like Sudan and countries like Nigeria because there are human rights violations going on over there, especially now in Sudan because of the South Sudan and North Sudan, and also the situation of the Christian minority in South Sudan. But what we are not doing is we are not criticizing countries where we are somehow feeling or having the feeling that economical interest might be more important. Let me put it that way. Just to give you a very good example, we have recently the ambassador of Saudi Arabia was with us in our parliamentary session. And of course we do have a big problem that Saudi Arabia has a lot of problems with human rights violations and with the issue of accepting minorities and other religions as a part of their country. But we do not dare, as a German government or as a German parliament, to push Saudi Arabia too much because we are so much dependent on them economically, energy-wise. So we just keep quiet. Whereas in countries like Nigeria or in Sudan, even though they have oil as well, but obviously not that much, fortunately, we are much more, putting them under pressure because we do have development aid cooperation with them. We give them a lot of money, so they are dependent on that. It's much easier to pressurize countries where we do have some characteristics or where we have some dependencies or interdependencies, whereas in countries like the Gulf states or Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, we just keep quiet. I mean, that's very unfortunate, but that's the truth. And that's why I was mentioning at the very beginning that talking about human rights is a very, very tricky issue because you are never very consistent. You are never very straight. You are never very sincere. You are never very honest when you talk about human rights in Germany because you are never able to have a clear, straight line. You always distinguish on countries that you do pressurize and countries you do not pressurize. Same as with China or with Russia. Yes, we do criticize them, we do try to pressurize them, but then we see it doesn't make a change, because they are economically so important for us that at the end of the day we stop talking about human rights issues, talking about economic issues. Talking with the US about human rights is also not very efficient because the US would simply not listen to us. There's no reason for the US to listen to Germany when we talk about the death penalty and the request that you stop that, or when we talk about Guantanamo, because it's not, for them it's not important if Germany is in favor or against it. It doesn't play a big role for them. So So yeah, these are the very difficult things in talking about working on human rights. And to be very frankly, talk very openly with you, it sounds good in the media, like we have now the European Championship, the soccer championship in Ukraine and Poland, so a lot of German politicians declared now a boycott. They said we will not go to Ukraine because of the human rights violation. But obviously Ukraine is not very much impressed by it. We had this problem with Azerbaijan, we had this European Song Contest, so everyone was talking about we are not going there, we boycott them. At the end of the day, it took place and for them it was very successful. So yeah, on the one hand it's good to talk about it, but on the other hand, at the end of the day, we do not achieve that much, and also in countries, coming back to countries like Pakistan, where I believe some of the human rights community, at the end of the day, they are not necessarily, I mean, those countries, they just have different standards, and we have to accept that. I mean, the ground reality is that somehow we believe that our Western standards have to be imposed on their standards. That's not possible, unfortunately. Sure, I can stop here. That was just a very brief overview, and Mark is pressurizing me a little bit because he's a very good friend of mine. But I told Mark, you have to help me. You have to find a wife for me, and he always pressurizes me now with some different issues. But you still are working on that, right?
I'm hoping you can join us for the dinner later, and then we might have a chance to do some informal dinner.
But that was just a very short introduction, so I will stop here, and then we'll go over.
What I'd like to do next, actually, is give a special introduction for Her Excellency. Maybe we can do the tradition of ladies first, in terms of giving you the next word on the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Ambassador Christine Nkulikiyinka is also a very close partner at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy. We've hosted a number of events at the ICD, also quite recently, in honor of actually the commemoration to the victims of the genocide. And I really have learned a lot from her, and also very much appreciated her support. I think, obviously, there are such powerful examples, not only in terms of human rights when it comes to Rwanda, but really in terms of also success stories when it comes to reconciliation. And I think there we've had some great discussions also of the role that culture and also cultural diplomacy has played in some of the reconciliation processes. So really happy to be here, Your Excellency, and I would suggest if we could maybe give her a special welcome, because she's just
First of all, I apologize for the delay. Very good to meet you. Thank you very much for the introduction, Mr. Hussein. I like your statement. I know that you really want to hear because we are between us and you keep it also for us. But I liked very much because those are some points that we would like to have more to read from other stakeholders, but I think I'll come back to the point a little bit later. Talking about the globalization and human rights and inequality in the society, I would just shortly introduce certain discussion points on Rwanda. I guess that you all know Rwanda is in the third of Africa, as I used to say, with a population of 11 million on 26,000 square kilometers. Rwanda is the most densely populated countries in the world. Rwanda's economic development has been disrupted by the 94 genocide drastically. The infrastructure as well as the social fabric of the Rwandan people was non-existent after the genocide in 1994. Rwanda had to start from scratch, so to say. While it was very clear from the outset that conflict transformation also needed to go hand in hand with the creation of welfare to fight poverty and diseases, the promotion of human rights was also seen as a very crucial, and in particular here, Mark also explained challenge of reconciliation of the Rwandan society. Looking back, the project Rwanda has rapidly marginalized social groups, including women, whose voices were rarely taken into consideration in decision making. So among the first steps was the guaranteeing of societal equality through political participation, regardless of the one's societal background and gender. So today, Rwanda has the parliament with the highest number of female MPs in the world, and with 56%. Rwanda is the only parliament with female being the majority. Nevertheless, we cannot talk about equality without improving the living standards of our people. So the fight against poverty was and remains a big challenge for Rwanda. The main question is how to provide enough employment opportunities for our young people, which accounts for 60% of the population. We need strategies which foster capacity building and entrepreneurship so that the society can develop a vibrant private. The key to Rwandan development has a lot to do with the power of our culture and ritual understanding. Rwandan tradition didn't only provide solutions for our systems of restorating justice, it also provided the source of our understanding of solidarity. If a community is based on solidarity, this means that the trade-off between rich and poor cannot be taken for granted. It rather aims to reach a win-win situation for all with equal chances. Here the issue of access is very important. It goes without saying that we need a healthy and educated citizenship to exploit the maximum potential and restore human and social rights. In the framework of Rwanda's long-term strategy, known as Vision 2020, Rwanda intends to reduce poverty by half and transform the country into a middle-income, knowledge-based economy. In order to meet this target, access to education has been created. The basic education was raised from 6 to 9 in the first phase, and the second phase is now to 12 years basic education for all. And the education is also free for all for the 12 years of basic education. Today, 95% of children in Rwanda go to school, and moreover, we also have access to health care so that more than 20% of the population are having a kind of health insurance. The biggest challenges was the child and maternal mortality, and we reduced it drastically in the last 5 years. Furthermore, in terms of globalization, it is important that we take advantage of new means of technology. Our youth can benefit from both by using ICT to bridge the global economic gap. This means that access must be provided to new forms of information and communication. Access to information and communication has never been as cheap and as fast as it is today. And this is also the case in Rwanda, not only for the young people, but for all the population. Even in a globalized world, we must remember that very often the conditions for equal participation and access are set at the national and also regional level. If we don't promote equal opportunities for domestically, we will also deprive our citizens from being part of this global village, which for some is already a reality. And if we don't promote human rights, such as the right of education, health, political participation and freedom of expression, we also undermine the potential of our people to shape global decisions. The last developments of criticizing that human rights are not, they are not protected in Rwanda, and I think when you were speaking, I thought also about Rwanda. I want to state here that even human rights is a process. The status of the human rights we have here in Europe and in other countries didn't happen overnight. It was a process. And even you cannot stand today and request Rwanda 18 years after such genocide to have the same standards of human rights and the same like you have it in Germany or in other countries. So my argument is always give us time. We know the human rights, we respect them, but we still have a society which is still very fragile and needs time to go through this process. And I highly appreciate what you said also, very frankly speaking, that the pressurization of some countries is not so as others, so that there is double standards, as we say, depending on the interest or the importance of the countries. This statement is very frank, and I much appreciate that you say what most of the people and most of the politicians know and think, but don't say openly.
Don't quote.
No, I would not do it. But as you said, it's very tricky and complicated to talk about human rights. The point is that each society has their own culture, own traditions, own history that they have to deal with and to go through before they reach a certain point. And I'm sure when our people have enough, they have food security, they are know that they are protected, because we as a country have also the very biggest challenge to protect our people, that they are educated. These all other human rights that we are always asked to respect. It will be done automatically, but we have to reach first a certain point of belonging in our societies so that we can also step on in other issues. So the basic, we are now dealing with the basic human rights of having enough to eat, to be secure, to have health care, to have rights to the human rights of education, and step by step we come to the other human rights. But the most important, of course, in Rwanda was the reconciliation and also justice, which was a very big challenge after the genocide, having around 1 million people that lost their life during the genocide, and 120,000 people sitting in prisons. How to deal with that big challenge to restore a stable society, but also to give justice to the people of Rwanda. We introduced a kind of traditional justice. I was talking about our own history and our own culture, a kind of jurisdiction allowing to deal with the cases, because using the common law justice would have taken more than 100 years to deal with those cases we had in Rwanda, so that we went back in our tradition and introduced the Gacaca jurisdiction, which was very important, not only in the point of view of justice, but also in reconciliation, because those courts were operating on the ground while the atrocities happened, bringing together the people of the hill together, so that they could exchange and maybe try to find also a way to live together again. And this was a big challenge. It took 10 years. We are closing the Gacaca jurisdiction this year in June, in some 3 weeks, with more cases handled by agricultural jurisdiction. And well, of course, we have also criticized, it has been criticized by human rights because of the form of the gacaca, but there was no better way to deal with the situation we had at that time after the genocide. So I think I will stop there and hope that you have enough questions so that we can exchange and have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. So Mark is going to just take over as a moderator, and maybe I can give the floor to you because you have to leave.
Thank you very much, and good evening again. And just on light note, starting, our current chair, I think your heart lies in Spain.
And in some other countries.
No, in Spain. Because you insisted that in Spain feels like understand. Ambassador and my friends here, Excellence. First of all, I just want to make some few remarks without insisting the time much here because it gets a bit too late. And this type of discussions are taking place on a glass of beer or wine. But still we have to conclude somehow. I want to start off by, first of all, echoing what has been transparent here and being said. Hardly politicians, could I call them politicians, could never come on their own and say that these are the facts which is on the ground. And I think that itself is a culture which we have to welcome. I know in many parts of our continent, even though their hands are still red, they can insist that we have not done anything. We are all fine and human rights is being respected. My first shock came when my own government, Canada, I lost one, Somalia, but I have another one now, and that's I think every citizen that's right. Will be highly celebrated. In a committee report of the UN Human Rights Council, and Human Rights report from Amnesty International Canadian section, accusing the Canadian government of total and utter neglect when it comes to the indigenous people's rights or First Nations people in a concentration camps where much of their life is really undesirable. But the delegation of Canada and the minister admitting that that's true. It's been great, and saying that we have taken the blame, we have taken the responsibility, and my government is willing now to start a large-scale program in order to make life better those settlements of the First Nations. And now this is the second time I'm hearing responsible member of Parliament admitting that we are not going to repeat that, but it's really something new, to at least admitting that there's some problems. I wish generally to have a better understanding of who rights. But my own testimony, when I was human rights activist in Somalia, but activist who has been now, could make when my life became difficult in 2001 to come and settle somewhere. And I used to have many European friends, starting in the UK, but I used to work closely with Amnesty International, so I used to come quite often. First line I learned was bus number 63 bring me to the Mount Pleasant, post office, and then I lined up and go to Amnesty office. That's where my unit was, mostly. But when I been displaced as an activist, I made a choice to settle in Toronto. A lot of my friends say that, why you did that? Why you couldn't come to UK, to Netherlands, to Sweden, to Germany? You have so many friends in Europe. Why you opted to go to Canada? And my answer was, I find Europe is a clan institution. Institutions owned by one racial clan in each country. And there's a feasible others, which everything can be blamed. The average Joe of Europeans have a blame theory. If things go wrong, particularly the law is tried to apply, they have, like in Germany, you have a Turkish people to blame. In Netherlands, you have Moroccan people to blame. But in Canada, in Toronto, if everything goes bad, who can blame you? Who owns Toronto? Toronto has equal number of Scottish, Irish, Somalis, Germans, name it. Chinese, Indians, in 2025, South Asians will be majority in Ontario, in Toronto. So the ownership is as diverse as the world it is. There are 185 Italians, villages, Italian Greek village, Portuguese village, Brazilian village. It's, so it means it belongs to everybody. And I think Canadians have to come and do a lot of, propagating that to the rest of Europe in terms of acceptance as who we are, so diverse and other. My today's talk is that in diplomatic norms, there's a lot of inconsistency here, and I'm glad you have touched some of them. Human rights today, this afternoon, was touched also in some, like Cairo Declaration or this. First of all, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a fundamental base for all mankind to aspire for. Those 30 articles are magic, simply because no religion or culture has ever opposed when they were adopted in December 1948. All from the Islam, the Christianity, all norms of people who were part of the UN at that time, and the rest of them were generally accepted. But emphasizing civic and political rights and economic and cultural rights has been a problem. Some countries were insisting on this, and others were insisting on that. But today, in a global, after the Cold War ended, we have a globe where the entire universal emphasis and indivisibility of rights is being put now in a very good proposal. And everybody, whether you live in the South or you live in the North now, rights are being so a different degree of obtainability, but everywhere we are struggling. In Germany, we are hearing now struggle is on, same like in Ethiopia, Eritrea, in Kenya. There are different stages of struggles people are doing. But that norm itself is a really universal aspiration where all of us have to seek to reach. And there's no division of that. Like organizations on international now are emphasizing more now on economic, social, demand dignity campaign. We focus more on those areas of rights, like His Excellency was saying, children's rights, right to housing, right to access to education. All these are now fundamental. It's not only famous prisons of conscience detained somewhere. It's important that still, but other rights also now have been detained. So we have to all insist that. The other thing is that, and I'm glad also you mentioned is that why some countries are getting on. So, for example, originally I'm from Somalia. Somalis were Sufi. So when I was growing up in Mogadishu, I've never seen Somalia except in one pocket where people of Arabian origin and some Pakistan origin used to live in Hamaroine, who have a black dresses with cover. Shukka, we call it in our culture. But I've never seen, and even those daughters and sons of their coming to school, they used to have a school uniform of short sleeve, a trouser to come to the school. We have never had a kind of, all the eyes open and all that, emphasizing in this region. It all came from one source called Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the official religion and the system of Saudi Arabia is Wahhabi Salafi. With the petrol funding, they all send export that to Pakistan, to Egypt, to Somalia. So why we are talking about, because the same Taliban or Al-Shabaab system of governance is a Saudi Arabian system of governance. But time and again, when we say that a woman now in Saudi Arabia has no personality at all, as we talk now, and it's a respected community of nation members of Arabia. You can't drive a car, you can't travel alone, you can't open your bank account, you have to immediately go either with your son, or you go with your husband, or your dad. You don't have individual. 60% of the population of Saudi Arabia. Have you ever had discussions going on in the TV or in local newspaper about that? The simple is no. Why? Why you cannot go? Why we can't all of us stand up for the rights of women in Saudi Arabia, for instance? Nothing more. We don't even criticize anything else. Rights of women in Saudi Arabia to have a driving permit to drive a car. It's a simple campaign. You can't do that. Only fringe of focus is going on, like Human Rights Watch, and that report, some sometimes you can hear the report of Syria on Human Rights Watch, quoting the Parliament of Germany in the Senate of the United States, but you never hear human rights report on even domestic, people who came from Philippines, from other parts of the world, working to their rights. When report is published, you never see that anybody advocating on that. Simply it dies. The moment it comes to the wire, either AFP or City Press or Reuters, within 1 hour, Saudi Arabia makes efforts that that story should die. Instantly. Who owns? Why do you bother them about Taliban or Al-Shabaab or others? Why don't you go the father, the person who preaches that, and tell him, hey, you have to change. It's a global community, we are asking to change. Because in Rome, where the Pope sits now, if he practices that, who can say that in Philippines, good Catholic in Philippines, if they take and measure the same things the Pope's court is practicing, are they the full fault? The answer is no. Saudi Arabia is the custodian of the two most holiest places of Islam. Whatever comes out has been taken from people, like in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Somalia, as a writ. It comes from there. So reform has to start from there. In Egypt, I'm sure in the elections now you will see Salafi fringe within the Islamic Brotherhood. And those are the people who you have to start on your own. And then we have the problem of enforcement of the same standard of rights we have. 220 million is being given every year to a state called Eritrea by the European Union. 220 million. Eritrea jails not only free press people, but also jails people who work in state media. Simply because when he was reading that statement in the local TV, and when the President Isaiah was mentioned, he was not looking happy. He could be arrested. The jailer of free press workers, second is in Eritrea and also in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, second recipient, foreign aid throughout the world. And still we praise them as leaders. We participate G8 summit, G20. He's a spokesperson of environment and negotiations for Africa and all that. But he's a dictator. He jails, he beats, he makes the entire regions like Somali populated area, Oromo populated area as an open prison where even journalists cannot go. Swedish journalists attempted to go there, he arrests them, charge them terrorism, and NGOs now, if I read for you, I'm just going now from here to Oslo, where the foreign minister is hosting a meeting on human rights defenders working in a situation of where peaceful assembly is not possible. If I read those notes and those who are interested, you could really believe that, you could really imagine and say that these are North Korea. Why the world could not make attention? Yeah. And that makes, Cotonou agreement of Article 8 dialogue, in terms of parliamentarians, European politicians to establish dialogue with those governments has never been there because security is emphasized more than human rights. And I just want to stop here in the interest of time and allow as much as my time allows to be part of the interactions. I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to go next? We have two left, and we are under a little bit of time pressure, so maybe Ambassador Karl-Erik first.
Thank you very much. Many interesting things have been said, but I want to focus a few minutes on the theme which we are supposed to speak about, namely how has globalization affected the way in which we respond to inequality in society? The interplay between globalization and social inequality and education. I think inequality, I don't blame my colleagues here at panel for not speaking too much. You did, Ambassador, you did. But inequality, but I think it's an issue which we tend to forget. Liberté, égalité, fraternité in the French Revolution. Égalité was, of course, extremely important and became very much a foundation for of political and intellectual movements in the 19th century. And let's say I would say there are about 3 or 4 obstacles to the fulfillment of more égalité, equality, since the French Revolution. The first thing which happens is in the Industrial Revolution, which we can put some 150 years plus ago. And this, of course, has an enormous effect on growth and richness of people. People start earning a hell of a lot of money. And at the same time, a lot of people work extremely hard and earn very, very little. So at the end of the 19th century, I'm now going out from Europe, I'm going more global then. At the end of the 19th century, you will find movements, trade unions and political parties who try to somehow re-establish or establish an equality between the rich and the poor. So we have movements like the Social Democrats, or we have more radical movements who are born like the anarchists and then the communists and so on. This development, it was a clear tendency in Europe for the Social Democrats to control this development more and more and somehow change the society in a peaceful way and establishing more equality in a peaceful way. But now comes first 2 enormous blows against this development. The first blow is, of course, the First World War, which destroys. Nice to meet you. Ciao. The first blow is, of course, the First World War, which more or less destroys all efforts to build up a reasonable society, and instead makes all countries and all people to soldiers or to cannon food in a very bloody war. Then you have the effects of the First World War, and it goes over to the Second War and Hitler and fascism and so on. And the Second World War is the second enormous blow against the equality. But in the meantime, some countries, including my own Scandinavia, and also in Germany, there were movements to start to re-establish this feeling for equality again, and quite successfully. I would see the peak was reached somewhere in the 50s. We were probably, at least in Europe, and perhaps also to some extent in Northern America, we were probably hardly ever so equal, let's say, so little differences between real rich and real poor as we were in the 70s. And now comes the next blow. And this is the blow which is still going on, and this is the theme for this discussion. It comes to the globalization. Because the globalization is, of course, there, it is almost from, let's say, from a historical point of view, it's almost like the industrialization, because all of a sudden, people, particularly the capitalists or the rich people or the people with ideas and resources, particularly they have now fantastic means to their disposal. What the machines did to industrialization in the 19th century, the new enormous market with a huge M has done to the capitalist and innovative people today in the last 30 years, starting around 1980 with let's say, the reforms of Reagan and Thatcher, and followed by many other countries, and also with the opening of the capital markets, etc. So we have an enormous development again, similar to what we had in the 19th century, in terms of being able to become rich, which automatically, unfortunately, always means being probably bound to become poor. Now, people, both politicians, particularly politicians, but also media, love positive stories. So it's not very popular to speak about these inequality things. except now when the whole of Europe has a crisis, and particularly we feel that even Greeks, to some extent the Spaniards, Portuguese, and Italians may be suffering from the effects of ongoing politics. But the new situation is that the rich people, so in these last 30 years, rich people have become enormously rich, and the poor people have become much poorer again.
They have what is called a social market economy. And this is what I was trying to say in my paper. Capitalism must be given a human face. That's what Europe tried to do. Okay? But today, all those gains made in the early and late 70s, they are being eroded at the seams. The power of the market is being overemphasized here. And the social market economy, whether it is social, still social, is, what the Germans would say, fragile. There's question mark there. Okay, and this is what the responsibility of the leadership. I had an occasion of presenting a paper in Nairobi, Kenya, in 2003, titled "Africa as a Stranger in the House of Globalization." I traced a lot of history about it. But the important thing is, if you come from the global south, this is where you see what inequality is. We will be discussing inequality, but if you've not really seen it in action, you will not really appreciate what it means that somebody goes to bed without food. Okay, that their mother. I happened upon a woman in Uganda. I got into the room. The woman was lying on the floor. She was dying of AIDS. She had 3 kids. The oldest kid is 5, but she looked 9. This kid had to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, go 4 or 5 kilometers to fetch water, and then she had to drop the water. She makes sure that her 3 and 2-year-old brothers are showered and gotten ready to go to Norway, because they couldn't go to school. Their father is dead of HIV/AIDS, the mother is dying probably, and you could see that the little brother is coughing, the kind of spasmic cough that shows indications of high fever. Okay, this is a family. This kid, her horizon has dropped off. She has no future. She has matriculated into poverty before she knew what life is. Her peers in Europe are still playing in the guitar and the pants, but this kid had no future. Out of no fault of hers. This is the face of poverty. I went to the Vatican for a conference. The Pope was sitting there. I said what I told the story. People couldn't hold their tears. I said, it's not about not holding your tears. It's about proactive reactions. What do we do? How do we respond? How has globalization has given us the tools to know about these issues in real time. Information is everywhere. We can use the internet to organize. People use it to generate funds. There was this Connie 12 story that caused through the internet. This is what globalization, one of the gains. We have the internet, we have a tool to organize today. It's not only, as an African, to be honest with you, sometimes I'm so very tired of talk shopping. We talk a lot how to save Africa. I always tell people, stop trying to save Africa. Let the Africans do something themselves. The people in leadership positions. What Europe should do, especially in relation to Africa, is to stop supporting the kind of useless governments we have out there. You made a very important point. Where there are interests, people play for their interests. You can't blame them. But that's why you see, and a lot of people, that's why if you talk to young people in the streets of Egypt or Tunisia, or even in other Arabian countries, people say that there's this kind of hate and suspicion of the West and America. Why is that the case? It is not because they hate these countries. Many of them want to immigrate to the United States or to Europe. But the fact is, they have been able to see the kind of hypocrisy in foreign policy. If Egypt does something because you have a strategic partner, you want stability, like somebody said today, you support Hosni Mubarak, you arm him to oppress his own people, not to build schools. The military and defense spending exceeds every other thing. But to Saudi Arabia, you say nothing. Although everybody knows that Saudi Arabia violates most of the rights of every other person, women, kids, foreigners. It's written on their website. Jews are not welcome to this country. The only place in the world where such a thing is written, but nobody criticizes them loudly. That was the case with Gaddafi in Africa. Why the selective justice? Why kill Gaddafi? Oh, he's a bad guy. He is about to kill his own people. That was the accusation. But what about Assad in Syria that is killing his own people? What are we doing? We are still waiting. And then when you talk to a guy from Libya who is a Gaddafi supporter and he gives you this example, what will you say to him? So Europe should get its act together, okay? Not getting the act together is opening us up to, the kind of, people don't take European politicians seriously in the streets of Africa. That's why the Chinese are everywhere. Because Africans have seen, since every other person is corrupt, the Chinese could not be worse. And things graduate from being bad to worse. So we have the tools. Technology has given us that. We could use that to organize. Action is what is needed. Young people that are here today, you are the leaders of tomorrow. When you imbibe all the what has been imparted into you here, it calls for action, not just sitting down. People can organize. Use the internet. Organize small groups in Facebook. Try to do something to help. Not throwing money at the African problem. Africa has usually up to $50 trillion for 50 years. Where is this money? We've not seen it. African politicians, they know my stand on this. These monies end back in Europe, in European bank accounts. The money, once they land in Africa, they are stolen. And the people have nothing from it. I made an example today. 1% of Nigerians sit atop 80% of the wealth. This kind of inequality is not sustainable anyway. The French killed their leaders for less. The Sun King had to lose his head for less. But in Nigeria, everybody goes to church to pray to God. Because the politicians will first of all destroy education. The people will not know their rights, they won't rights. It happens all over sub-Saharan Africa. Nobody, that's why sometimes when I talk with Africa, it seems like a war. It pains. Such inequalities is not sustainable. The society is going to explode someday. Comes up, the maternal mortality rate in Africa is so high. Kids die for malaria. Malaria. Common codeine and chloroquine could cure that. $5. Not that these countries don't have money. Nigeria, my country, for example, this country earns billions of dollars every week from oil. Africa is one of the best places to be a politician. You don't need to tax people. You have the resources. But in Europe, you have to tax people and tell them what they're going to do with their money. But African politicians will come to Europe and we will feast them here. I was here at the German parliament 2 years ago. And Eyadema, Nasimbo Eyadema Jr. was here. We sat down together at the same conference. And he had an entourage of about 150 people. What are they coming to Europe to do? On whose people's money? And the German people, they were being feasted here and being declared the New Hope of African leadership. New Hope, in which the kind of democracy is that. This guy, his father was a dictator for so many years. His father died and the military got together and made him a president. And Europe welcomed him with open arms. They wanted stability, they're not talking about human rights. I am glad that a lot of people are pointing this out. But these policy dissimulations tell African young people that Europe is not serious, they don't care about our welfare. Africans actually, we don't want it to solve African problems for us. All we want is that you don't support the people who are making the problems more complex. You could raise your voices against these guys here, the politicians. Tell them that they will need human rights. Listen, John F. Kennedy said, whoever made peaceful evolution impossible makes violent revolution inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very powerful words of momentum and inspiration. Now what I'd like to do, since we are about 20 minutes over schedule, is if the speakers will agree and not immediately run, at least take a few questions and comments from the audience. And I think for efficiency's sake, I would say we can maybe group them together, 4 or 5 comments or questions, again, just to allow as many voices to be heard as possible. And then not necessarily everyone needs to respond, but whoever would like to give maybe a brief response to 1 or 2 of those. I think that will allow for some dialogue to take place. So let's try to work with the constraints of time. As always, if you could briefly introduce yourself, also when making a question, and let's use the microphones as well so we can hear. So you can just raise your hand if you'd like to offer a comment or a question to the panel or to each other. And don't be shy of the name of the time, so please. Please.
I would have a question regarding the external borders of Europe.
Can you introduce yourself also?
What?
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. My name is Kumana. I just graduated from cultural anthropology and psychology. And I've been reading into that issue a lot lately, and I find it incredible how human rights get violated there. And I always end up with the question, where do you draw the line? And what would you suggest? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Actually, before you respond, Sarmad, let's try to collect a few more, just because otherwise I'm afraid we won't really get to them. So are there any other comments or questions? Please.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm actually working on memory and witnessing, so I'd be very interested. I have two questions actually. The first question for Her Excellency, I'd be interested to know a little bit more about what still needs to be done perhaps in Rwanda to work through. We talk a lot in Germany about working through the past or dealing with the past, and whether there is still what has been done culturally perhaps. I understand the justice and reconciliation process with the Protected trials, but are there any cultural efforts through remembrance or commemoration, for example? What role do you think that has in helping Rwanda move forward with some of the other issues that you've mentioned? The second question is about the CONI 2012 campaign that was mentioned. I agree that this is kind of quite a stark example of the power of globalization and new social media to propagate certain messages. But there was also much criticism of the CONI 2012 campaign, particularly the idea that again we were returning to this narrative that Africa needs to be rescued, and also some misunderstanding of the current issues in Uganda. So I wondered then, what are the dangers of these new social media, which we might think of as forms of witnessing and political activism, but then with the best of intentions can misrepresent and cause more problems perhaps.
Thank you. Any other additional questions or comments? Especially for people whose voices maybe we haven't heard from yet today. If not, then I would suggest maybe if we could have a concluding remark from either all participants, all the panelists, or those panelists who feel inspired by the questions or comments, and in no particular order. So I'll let you democratically amongst yourselves decide who begins. Please.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Thank you very much. I like also these interventions, and yes, I would much like to discuss it deeper, but I think we don't have time. We don't have the opportunity to exchange more. But the most important is stated what I like is Africa must be understood by Africans. So we are the one who have to take the lead for the better life of our people. And there was a misunderstanding that the Europeans and Western countries used to say we want to save Africa, but it won't be possible if we don't want it and if we don't want it ourselves. So much to the point. And also like the information is very interesting also. And the recipes we also give, I think we get the second part of it in Rwanda, and we are trying also to show that leadership is the most important, to drive against the negative, because there are not only negative effects from the globalization, but the leadership is the most important, to drive against the negative effects from the globalization. Responding to your question, we are doing a lot in Rwanda. We have a Commission for Reconciliation and Unity, but there are several programs around the country. In Rwanda, we are commemorating the genocide 1 week from the 7th to the 13th of April each year with different celebration in all parts of the country. This is the National Commemoration Week, where the flags are also on half-mast and no festivities, no. When you arrive in Rwanda, you also feel that this is very particular, and this is also very important. Not to forget that, to keep in mind how the because the first generation born after genocide, they are now 18. They have to know what happened. They should not forget, no one should forget what happened. And this is very important to have the root of commemorating. But the whole period, the 100 days that the genocide took place from the 7th of April to the 4th of July, we have different activities in different regions, in different parts of the country, where they organize themselves. And for some people, they are today, 18 years after the genocide, have the opportunity to, to bury their relatives in dignity. First 18 years after. But then I think this is also a very important step for the reconciliation, that the people have the opportunity to close with dignity this part of their own and their personal part of their life, and then move forward and move forward. And those are very important. And maybe talking also about social media, there is an initiative taken by young people here in Berlin. They call it Your Voice Against Genocide. I think if you look at it in Google, you find it, or you can leave a message or your opinion on how to fight genocide and your feelings and so on. And I think they would be very much pleased to see that some of you, of young people, also gave their opinion and gave their voice against genocide. And those are very good initiatives also by young people who didn't, who partly were born after the genocide, but still sensitive and also want to interest the younger one also to be sensitive on these issues. But I think if we still accept that we have so big differences between and so big inequalities, we go for sure and we can see another genocide in another part of the world. And I think this is also one of the most important messages we have to take, that we have to fight for inequality to avoid such a catastrophe as we had in the world.
A few words, I have to leave. Just a few words. I think it is very encouraging to hear what you are saying, Ambassador, about the development. Microphone. Sorry, about the development in Rwanda. I think it's interestingly enough you can see in this country. I admire, I must say, the German attitude to their genocide, to the Holocaust, very much. I think it is a forebild. It's a good example, really, for instance, for Austrians or even for Swedes to some extent, because the neighboring countries were not innocent in the Holocaust. But the Germans are keeping going on. It's the third generation, and I think, I'm afraid that Rwanda will also have to go on for generations with this, because it's the only way somehow to avoid a repetition of that. On Europe, I'm sure that Bundestag has one definition, but my organization, European Cultural Parliament, has applied the same definition as the Council of Europe, which means Europeans, according to that definitions, are you find in 47 nations. The most eastern part of Europe is Yekaterinburg, near the Ural, or Baku, as mentioned, at the Caspian Sea, and the most western part, I guess, is Reykjavik. So the European Union plus the other countries, plus Turkey also, members of the European Union. So that is our definition, but there are other ways to say this also. Thank you.
The closing remarks, Sarmad. So you mentioned the Sweden has a question. I like Sweden. So greetings to Stockholm.
Yeah, well, I've been marine the next few decades.
Oh, okay. Nice question. You mentioned the issue of those refugees who come from Africa to cross the Mediterranean to try to enter Europe, and blocked by Frontex, where obviously Frontex is a European agency which is trying to protect European borders, particularly in the Mediterranean, Greece, Spain, Italy. And I was recently in Lampedusa, which is an island in Italy, and I met a number of refugees from, actually they come all from Tunisia or from Algeria or Morocco, but they are originally from Nigeria, Sudan, from other Central African countries. And they were very openly telling me, we would rather die than going back to our countries. But we, Europeans, and then coming back to this huge hypocrisy that what I was trying to emphasize at the very beginning, we are always trying to promote this Western values like promoting democracy, human rights, all that kind of stuff. But then when those people try to enter our borders, we do not let them in, We try to send them back, and we take the risk that these people are killed, in the Mediterranean. We all know that, but this is the double standard. We are simply not sincere, we are not honest, and we are not consistent. And that's not only in this case, it's also in other cases. Take the case of the Arab Spring, for instance. I was quite often in Egypt because I was traveling with German delegations, and we were quite often seeing that for the last 30 years we were supporting the Mubarak regime, but we knew that he's torturing his own people. There was huge human rights violations going on in Egypt. We knew that, but still we were tolerating it because Mubarak was a certain kind of guaranteeing us stability. You see, that was, the reason why I was telling you very openly what I was taking away, openly in official statements, you always hear, we promote our values, we promote, but in fact, we don't, we promote our interests. We promote our strategic right interests. We did interfere in Kuwait in the early 90s because we had our interest. We interfered in Libya because we had we didn't interfere in Rwanda in the early 90s, even though we knew that millions and millions of people are slaughtered. Our intelligence reports were clear. We had our satellites were telling us and giving us the pictures, all these vivid images where people were slaughtered, and we didn't interfere because it was not our strategic interest. In this country, Rwanda, unfortunately, there was no vital interest of the Western world, which is so unfortunate. Millions of people were killed because of us, because we, allowed them to commit that kind of crime. So it is very unfortunate, it is very insincere, and we have to face it. So what I was trying to emphasize is that we Europeans, or we in the Western world, that we push other countries to accept human rights, to promote Western values, we have to do it as well, and that is the first step. So thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you all.